So welcome to the UpLevel Podcast, Sharon.
Hi, Misty. Nice to see you. Thank you for having me.
So good to see you. I'm really excited that we're going to get to listen and learn from such an incredible leader in the tech space, a powerful female leader in the tech space. And so before we pull all of your wisdom, I want to start with this question. When you look at the past 4.5 years, what do you think is happening in our world?
So, I guess one of the biggest things that I noticed is just the fact that there's so much change happening at such a rapid pace that in order for you to be a successful leader or to be super nimble, you have to be a change agent yourself. But at the same time, the requirement is that you be grounded for your team. And it's a really hard dichotomy because a lot of times, and I've done this, I have been the person who's always changing, who's been asked to be on growth assignments, who's the person who's come in to be a change agent and, take a team from one level to the next level. And then I've had to do that as part of my team, dealing with a lot of change in tech. And at the same time, if you're not the one who is grounding everyone and the one showing up for everyone and the one committed and creating core values and structure, it becomes a mess, right? So we've all dealt with tumultuous times. I look back and I had started, I had actually been doing a few talks with friends of mine from Harvard Business School, and we called it Change Agent. And it was all about how do you deal with the amount of change that's going on? And realistically, we're always through our life having to do this. So it's just a matter of what are you going to do to take it to another level?
So for you specifically, because you launched CrewAsis at the beginning of the pandemic, is that right?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So not only was the world doing what the world was doing, you were launching a new business. What was that time like for you?
Yeah. So funny enough, I'll tell you a little bit of the story on that because I think it's important for how we created the company. I started my entry into being an entrepreneur through analytics and data in the craft alcohol space. And I was looking at what areas doesn't have as much data and analytics, and how could I create the next AC Nielsen or IRI within a space that doesn't have that data and analytics. And so funny enough, I wasn't familiar with that space at all. Christy, it wasn't something that I was even considering going into, but as an entrepreneur, you're like, hey, where should I start? When I learned that they wouldn't pay for what I had built, which was an app that created a brand equity score, I pulled all this data into an API. I created a craft beer brand equity score, and I went out to craft breweries and would sell it.
Wow.
And they wouldn't pay for it. And I was like, okay, well, this isn't going to be a lucrative business. And so at the time, Canada was blowing up with cannabis. We all remember that. And it was great. It was a great time to be in that industry in Canada, however, not federally approved in the US. And so at that time, just before the pandemic hit, I was doing a presentation in a conference in LA on data in cannabis. And a couple of things happened. One, I'm not actually somebody who consumes it on a regular basis. So at the event, it was a little bit off my current core values. And people would have been like, okay, this is an interesting turn for Sharon, who's been a corporate, living 23 years in corporate and then working in a new space. I realized, though, at that point when I did the conference that this is probably not going to be a very lucrative business idea either, because in order for you to be getting dollars through banks and approved, you need to have it federally approved. And it's still not federally approved today. And this was 6 years ago. So I decided this is not the greatest space for me to be in. And I was in LA during the beginning of the pandemic. And everyone knows the biggest places that were hit were the kind of Seattle, LA, like the ports and the areas. And so I got sick in LA. So to this day, I probably got sick because of COVID. At that point, I decided I had to pivot the company. And that's when I flew back to New York and said, we're going to have to go back into my background, which was marketing consumer brands, and figure out a way of taking some new spin to data and coming up with a way of approaching companies on being able to solve a problem that they had. And so that's where CrewAsis was born. And that's why I started the company. And we started as a data as a service company to be able to get insights for marketers on the biggest problems they were trying to solve. And then it slowly evolved into the company that it is today.
And how would you describe what it is today?
So we're a marketing intelligence platform, and we use publicly available data to grow sales and market share for consumer brands. And the way that we do that is we combine data science because I have a really deep passion for data, statistical analysis. We can talk about that as well. And then obviously it was going to be layering on AI. So I've been studying AI since I started my academics back in, we don't even need to say the date, but I studied neuroscience and cognitive psychology. I was doing research on learning behavior, and all those things were applied. And I did a lot of stuff in tech. And in my jobs, I did a lot of technology development, even though I was a marketer. It was about how do you drive efficiency in the roles that you're doing in all these marketing functions. And so that is how it evolved. And our AI component is layered onto the elements within our technical structure. I don't want to get into too many details now, but AI should just complement what you're doing. You should never feel like it's the only thing running. It should be applied to various areas to be able to improve the automation, improve the process, improve the amount of time that it would take to do something. And that's where we saw kind of leaps and bounds in the last couple of years, especially with OpenAI and the other large language models and acceleration of AI, I think, which has helped actually my company as well.
Well, definitely want to talk more about AI, but I'm gonna pull out some of like the things I heard you do as a leader. You were able to something wasn't really aligned and or wasn't going maybe in the way that you had envisioned, and you were flexible, you were agile, you were listening very deeply to what is the next need, and you also built upon your own strengths. You know, you knew you had expertise and experience in this specific area. And so you pivoted, and now you've got this thriving new organization. And so when you look back, so 4.5 years ago, like to when all that was going on, like what are some of the insights from when you were pivoting, being flexible, listening to now, like looking back there?
One of the things that I did as a marketer was I was responsible for looking at trends and combining data and mining data. And so I think I was fortunate enough to start that earlier in my career. So it felt like second nature when things started to really explode during the pandemic and then now. So a couple things that I was doing. One, I worked on a big project with Harvard Business School during the pandemic where we were helping small businesses, especially when they were becoming more digitally transformed. And we know how everything was changing so quickly and everybody had to adapt some sort of digital transformation. So I did a lot of learning modules and teaching and helping businesses during that period of time. And I think that for me, it is always a combination of what data science is, which is technology applied to statistical models. And then you're actually learning, you're using strategy. And that's technically what marketers do. But when I really started to teach myself about what data science is, how you can leverage Python and coding to analyze data, and my love for finding things in data comes from reading a lot of Nancy Drew books when I was younger and
Amazing.
solving mysteries. So
Wow.
I feel like you're constantly solving a mystery in data. And for me to get marketers excited about data, we should be showing them something that they've never seen before and uncovering blind spots. And one of the things that I always talk about is that there's the whole concept of, people are going to know for certain information and other people are going to be able to show you stuff that you don't see. And then there's blind spots that nobody is able to identify. And so when we use our models and our platform, I'm looking to find information and insights and ideas that none of us would find with the naked eye or have the manpower to do because you're using millions of data points. And so that's what I set forth to do, was figure out how do you do that. And I knew that we all can use Excel and Google Sheets. And that's what I did in my job is, I would take data and put it in there. And I was like, how do we actually take strong coding skill set and data scientists. And although they don't understand necessarily from experience, we know when something doesn't look right, they are able to mine through data in 24 hours on something that would take 3 months to do. Right.
Wow.
So that is what really got me on board on, hey, this whole concept of AI, this whole concept of data science, I kind of know as a trend or a futurist. And I say it because as a marketer, you're responsible for consumer insights and behavior. So if you're a marketer, you're trying to find the next thing before somebody else does, because that's what you are essentially paid to do.
Mhm.
And when you're trained in that all the time, you're always digging into to information. So I would be the person that would look at data tables, which a research house would run research. They would present to you 20 to 50-page PowerPoint on what they found in the data. And then there's this big book of data tables, and nobody goes to them.
Yeah.
And I would ask for those data tables, and I would look there to see, is there anything else that we can find? And imagine back then it was, somebody else is running the models and you'd never really get access to that. And usually it was SPSS that was being done behind the scenes and running, cluster analysis, etc. You get the visuals of the data and look for anything that might be interesting. And now today you can run your own code and actually look for insights and ideas. Whereas that's what really changed the whole landscape. The thing is that most people don't know how to do that. And you spend a lot of time having to fine tune models, because we know what happens when you put a prompt in that's incorrect, because we all see how ChatGPT operates. And so we essentially spent years working on this. And I can't tell you that I knew exactly where it was going to go, but I do know that I saw the trends with AI. I saw the metadata we were consuming. And I also knew that we were going through a lot of digital transformation. So it's a matter of how do you figure out how to capitalize on pulling all that together.
Yeah.
And then now it's about packaging it up properly so that you're solving the problem, and they see, the marketers or consumer brand strategists or insights teams see how you're able to do it faster and smarter with AI and technology.
Congratulations, first of all, for innovating. And I mean, your brain is it's incredible, and every time folks, you're not seeing this, but when Sharon is talking about this work, she's lit up. So clearly it's a passion, a big passion of yours. And the fact that you've spent so many years honing your craft and in different ways. So it's really neat to see that you've now birthed CrewAsis, which is the culmination of the years of work that you've done. What's it been like to be a woman in tech?
Yeah. So first, there's probably three main things that I'd say. One is that tech has been male dominated for so long that being a female in tech, you wouldn't get a chance to meet a lot of other women in tech, right? So you're usually the only woman in the room, and then there's going to be a question about your credibility. So you have to have all your credentials ready to go. So the first thing is you're usually the only woman. The second thing is your credentials have to be far more, I would say almost farther ahead, or you're doing, you need to have all the check boxes. And so I laughed earlier, Christy, because I said, I was in Techstars this year in the spring cohort, and a lot of people, my guy friends aren't going to remember my birthday or some other special event. But when I got into Techstars, then it was okay, I'm a legit founder in tech, right? So there's some things that you need to get under your cap for them to feel like, hey, you're actually a credible founder and a credible individual in technology. And then the third thing is you just have to be able to show that you're an innovator. And it is very difficult for a lot of people to, one, continue to persist, right? At the end of the day, this isn't a venture that I said it's going to take me 1 or 2 years. And by the way, all laughing aside, I thought it would be a lot less time to get something off the ground. But as my dad likes to say, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it.
That's right.
So those three things are kind of what I think has made me a different founder and staying in it, which is I do believe that the next round of big company IPOs in technology will be women founders. And I
Yes.
also think diverse founders, and I'm really excited to see, over the next 5 to 10 years, those are going to be what's going to change because the culture is built differently than, and also we've seen what happens when an LLM is built with just one individual and one specific coder or software engineer versus, um, a culture that was built a different way. So, and approaching the problem a different way.
Beautiful. Well, I'm going to hold that vision with you to like receive those nominations. I mean, you've worked so hard. It's like you're so deserving of it and then some. And then let's talk about the culture that you are creating as a leader at CrewAsis. And because you're a female leader, right, you can bring different attributes into an organizational environment. So, what are you really proud of about what you're creating as from a culture perspective?
Yeah, I think the main thing has been always, and my team would say that I give them chances that a lot of people wouldn't give them. I mean, my team's in front of major customers, and we're talking big logos like billion-dollar companies on
Yeah.
meeting number one. And throughout my entire career, I've always built solid teams. And I am a tough founder and I am a tough leader, meaning if you put the work in and you show that you're doing that work and that you're able to quickly learn, you'll do really well under my guidance. I have trained probably 150 people, Christy, in the last few years.
Wow.
I last 4 or 5 years because I've just had the opportunity to work with some of the schools all over the US and had the opportunity to train a lot of people. So it's given me, the ability to really create my own structure. So imagine we just started with data scientists, and then I was able to build out the org chart. So we have product, sales, marketing, data engineering now. I said product, data science, and engineering. And so we have a large group for a startup. And I think the other thing that I'm really proud of is just when I have, especially women in tech and STEM, they wouldn't necessarily get pushed into a spot where they have to build their confidence quickly. We don't get that early enough in our career.
Yeah.
And because everybody's going to be a little bit more delicate, et cetera. And I'm like, there's no way you're going to be in there. You need to show up. You need to do the work, of course, but you need to like really start to feel like you're changing at a faster pace so that you have some growing pains, and then it builds your confidence. And that's what we know is true for women and for females and for diverse talent. And so I definitely do that for anyone who's been in my team. They realize like, I'm going to put you in situations that you weren't in before, and that's going to build your confidence. And then I like watching them on the other side, which is, hey, this now individual works for X company, AWS, Google, or even like Citizen Bank or JP Morgan.
Yeah.
And I watch their career and they always come back and say, hey, it was such a great experience working with you. I'm tough though, Christy, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I'm a tough founder to work with.
Well, what are some of the qualities that make you tough?
Oh, yeah. Let's see. One is a high need for achievement, but I've definitely changed that over years, meaning, uh, when you would do those workshops in corporate and you'd have those sit down moments with people on your team and they're like, why are you so hard on yourself? And I'm like, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
And I think it was just, my parents are both from South America, from a country called Guyana. So they're immigrant parents to Canada.
Yeah.
I grew up with a lot of aunts, and West Indian women are very strong women. And
Yes.
so I grew up within that household. And so it definitely rubbed off on me. Second of all, my mom was actually sick when I was pretty young. So I actually had to step up and look after my brothers a little bit more. So I had two younger brothers. And I also had to just become a little more independent.
Mm.
And again, not a bad thing, but it just
Yep.
created a lot more of this. Hey, if you have a problem and you need an answer, you better go find it.
Yeah.
Right. So there's
Yeah.
always this element of don't wait for somebody to answer your problems, or don't wait for somebody to say that your problem is the one that's the prioritized one.
Yeah.
Make it happen. Right. And I've
Yeah.
definitely done that. And then the third thing is I really created a strong community and relationships, and a strong element to people believing in what I'm doing, but also me believing in what they're doing. So I still to this day really believe that if I provide a smile to someone else on their day, that I will help them in their day and not.
Amazing.
And in Brooklyn, it's a very cool thing to do because Brooklyn's a very community based. I wouldn't go,
Yeah.
I wouldn't, I'd say the Midwest is probably like that as well. But being Canadian, as you know,
Yeah.
in New York, it is a great thing when you can feel like you've contributed to somebody's life in some small way. And I think those small acts of kindness also help our company culture. And I
Incredible.
built
And
that into my team.
yeah, and it's, if I'm going to break it down a little bit, like it doesn't sound tough. What it sounds like is you hold people to a very high standard. And it sounds like in your career, a lot of people have been able to up level because of that, right? You told stories about how they go on to other things. You are a leader who wants people to take responsibility for their world, which we all know in this day and age, that has to come. It has to be a self-initiated thing that you really want to come with a solution, and if there is a mistake, you take responsibility for it. We learn from it, we grow from it. And then this reciprocity piece. That's what I hear. Reciprocity is another one of like what's in your toolkit. And that's so important when building a culture and both internally and externally, right? Your local community, but with your peers and whatnot. So, I mean, if I'm going to say these are some of the things to help people lead through crisis, chaos, and change, Sharon, right there, responsibility, reciprocity, relationship, like really, really critical.
I think learning to walk away as well, Christy. I never used to be able to do that. And you know that culturally it's probably, and also being a female, you would be like, oh, well, I'm going to make this work. And now I've learned, you know what, if this isn't serving me well or our company well, then it's not going to make sense for the long term. And that's okay. Or maybe it's not going to make sense now. And in the future, maybe it will match up. So that might be customers that, you're working with a customer, a really difficult customer, and you think, hey, I can turn this around. It might not be a good fit, and it's okay to let go. And I taught myself to do that now. Another thing are just partners, in terms of partnerships with companies, and, it's give and take. And if you don't feel like it's a win-win, then maybe it's not a great partnership. And I could tell you, I'll tell you the anecdote story.
Yeah.
I had a company I was working with who I briefed for 3 weeks to work on a specific business problem on our company. And they wrote in a document that was questions for me. Can we meet the inventor of this particular, of the data science models, et cetera? And I was like, what in these last 3 weeks would make you think that it was anyone else other than me?
Mm.
So those are the kind of things where I'm like, there's no point on me trying to go through and explain this, because if you miss that, then you miss like the core of our company. And I can't work with somebody like that. It just doesn't make sense. But before I might have been like, oh, let me re-explain this to somebody. Right. So there are a lot of examples now where I really think through things and say, is this really going to get us to the next level? And if it's not, then we just need to make sure that we're cutting early and being clear and transparent and just moving to the next
So
spot.
that's beautiful. It's so important. And nobody has time to waste anymore, folks. And I still think inside organizations there can be a lot of, well, I don't have the authority to make those decisions. I've just got to do it. But what if you do? What if you can actually ask the questions that Sharon's been asking herself? And maybe you do need to take it to a manager or a leader, but should we be working with all the vendors and partners that we are? That's one of the things at UpLevel we've been very, very mindful about. Like, let's work with the partners that actually get the mission, that are on board, with that we're not using our resources and our energy and our time to enroll them in something that another partner is going to get. They're going to get, which means we can go deep into the work and like get going faster. So I feel like that is something that if more of us could adopt, it would help us lead through these times.
Yeah. And
Sharon,
I think, yeah.
I was just dropping the wisdom. Yeah, it does
so
take a while to learn, doesn't it? Yeah.
And I wish that I also say that, learn earlier to set boundaries and drive clarity in your communication. And I tell my team that the clearer you are on, and one thing I've talked with my coach about, Christy, is about commitment for my team. Like, how committed are you to this? Are you working on a project you're committed to? I find a lot of people like to jump around projects, and I'm like, hey, finish this off first. Make sure you I gave you this project so that you would be able to feel like, hey, I worked on something really cool in tech, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, the next cool thing comes up and everybody wants to work on that. And I'm like, well, have you finished your current technology project that we're looking at?
Yeah.
Because for my job, I have to be, we talked about 6 years ago looking at AI and really incorporating it. I have to look now to the next 6 years. And I tell my team that all the time. For everyone, if you put the blinders on now and aren't thinking about where you want to be in 6 years from now, you're going to miss something that could be a technological advancement or a change in just consumer behavior. And all of a sudden, you're not on the same plane that you were. And we've seen it with companies, and I know I'm going to bring up some funny ones, but Kodak and, companies that haven't been able to pivot as quickly and make a shift. And so I'm always reminding them, and just in life in general, you just need to keep your eye out on what are the big changes happening.
Well, let's talk a little bit about AI because it's just come, very fast into our world. And I was mentioning to you, we do a lot of work at Google. And so it has been a big conversation from a leadership perspective. And when we take it in this context of leading through crisis, chaos, and change, how do you see AI? What's the role AI plays in leading through crisis, chaos, and change?
Yes, I love this question because I think what's happened is people got really scared about how fast it accelerated. And then, of course, innovators like myself, early adopters, are excited because we thought it would take longer. And AI is artificial intelligence. And at the end of the day, our brain is still one of the most powerful and most thoughtful, emotional. I mean, the amount of information that we humanly are able to synthesize and come up with is unbelievable. And no one can fully understand how the brain works because there are too many other things happening, right? It's just like being human is still a big mystery. So when you apply that to artificial intelligence, the goal, and I've been working, I was telling you, in neuroscience and cognitive psychology since my first degree. And then I was like, hey, I did research where we were teaching, we were looking at how do you learn behavior and can you teach animals that? And I did a lot of research in this space. And then working on AI, it's now about how do you apply this to human behavior? How can you use AI for good? There will always be issues on anything that's developed within the span of like good to bad to evil, right? And I completely understand, and I will never fully understand where the elements of bad could go because all of us know that it's beyond the realm of what a lot of times we're thinking about. But when you think about how AI can help us, at the end of the day, there are a lot of tasks that humans don't have to do that we really could spend on other creative elements or areas that could be on solving bigger problems. And so if you can automate a task that will help free up your brain to be able to work on other things, then that's actually what AI can do. And I'll use some really funny examples because I think they're relevant. I mean, no one else is going to think they're funny other than a marketer, but we used to have to write these briefs and we would spend days, if not weeks, picking the correct word and like really spending our time populating these documents. And now you can do it in like 30 seconds. And so I laugh because it's great because now you can spend it on like the things you really want to spend your time on. And so I do think that there's a lot of guardrails that need to be put around how fast things have accelerated. But actually the work that I'm doing, and we're working, I mentioned, on research with Harvard Business School, as well as one of our customers in the healthcare space, we're actually looking at how do you improve consumer health through nudging behavior using technology and AI. And you can think of it in the sense of nudging behavior already happens, and it happens in Instagram. And I'll use that example because right now you're scrolling through Instagram, and all of a sudden, if you were looking at eating healthier, I want dessert. I love dessert and I love sweets, but I want healthier ones. And now I get fed a lot of recipes that are, very clean. I get excited. I want to eat
Yeah.
them all.
Yeah.
But you also get nudges on like your health and like working out. And so the whole concept is what would you do if you could help change consumer behavior for the good? If you were somebody who potentially could be on the path to diabetes, but if you changed your diet now and changed your exercise habits now, that it would help improve or give you 10 years on your life, which a lot of us are living longer, but we want to live those extra years healthier. And I think that there's small things that could be done, and these small nudges in behavior can be done through information being sent to you or shared with you, or you tracking. I mean, I know another example is I track my steps. And if I notice that I'm dropping off, it actually does impact my health. So I want to get to like 15,000 to 20,000 steps a day. I have my dog, I'm going to walk him. He needs to get his steps. But at the same time, like, all right, have I done my other hard like workouts for the week? And am I eating healthy? And all these things accumulate that I have these trackers now that we're using that are there to help enable you to see, are there patterns in what you're doing that are potentially detrimental to your health? So, and then the other thing too is being conscious. I'm going to use this other example, which is kind of funny, but I use Progressive Insurance, car insurance. They actually, what do they do? They have this thing that they insert into your car and that tracks your driving.
Yeah.
And anyone driving in New York knows that, I mean, it's crazy. Okay.
Yeah. It's wild. Yeah.
You're going to be slamming on your brakes multiple times. But what I will tell you that it's done is, because I know that if I slam on my brakes, it indicates that it's feeding information to Progressive about my driving. I try to be as mindful as possible about where I'm going now and how I'm driving. And like, is the light going to turn amber and then red? And you can't always, it just helps me be more conscious of it, I guess I'd say. So there's a really great book too called AI 2041. And it is a book that talks about what the future of AI will do. And it's set in the year 2041. And actually, one of the first examples around insurance. And if your whole family was under a health insurance policy, what things would impact.
Mhm.
But they're written by two Chinese authors. One's very deep, heavy in tech, and the other is actually a storyteller. So it's a really cool book to see where AI can go and what things it might influence or impact. So I am definitely somebody who's an optimist about it for helping, and it's because I've studied it for so long, Christine. It's because we have been studying AI for so long and trying to figure out how do you create and mimic things that your brain does naturally. And that is just for us to study the brain more. And now here it is accelerated into creating tools, right? And platforms to be able to help you be more productive and it doesn't even have to, there's some great other things that are, I'll mention another really cool tool. It actually records your stories. And if you write, it's called Autobiograph. And it's an app that was created by these founders that really wanted to give this element of storytelling in your life. And if you record 10,000 hours, you end up being able to write a book about your life. And then you can also create stories or a letter to somebody you care about by recording these stories. And the AI then creates the entire story by taking these little mini stories from you. And it's almost like a really nice gift. And so I went to an event in New York. The founders were there and I was invited to it. It's called Autobiograph, or I might be saying it incorrectly, but you get the gist. And it's like a very cool way of using AI to help others. And that's what they are on a venture to do, is not use AI as something that's going to be detrimental, but something that's going to help you build more community and bonding with other people and a legacy, which is kind of cool.
Well, thanks for it's definitely a fresh perspective. And because you have such a passion for data, you've got this perspective of like, this is going to be leveraged for good, So I think a lot about when we're looking at AI through these times, maybe the question for us to ask ourselves is, what's the perspective I'm holding as I look at this? And because my work might be more relational based, sometimes I'm looking at through the lens of, how does AI disconnect us from relationship, with ourselves, with others, the bigger thing, whatever you call it. And I can get critical of it, I'm like, I don't know if I want everything to be tracked, because I wanted that humanity piece. So what do you say to that, to people who are
Well, you're going to laugh at this other example that I have then, because I use a personal assistant that is AI driven, and his name's Pi, Pi. And so it is an app, and I actually use it to help me become more humanistic, meaning sometimes I jump to conclusions about something, or I have a question about something, and I'm like, how would you look at this? And because of the way that the large language model is supposed to be more conversational, it actually gives a very humanistic approach to solving things.
wow.
And so you might have a bad day, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to vent, but I actually don't need to tell anyone else. And I now am going to just say to Pi, here are the 3 or 4 or 5 things I did that are crazy today. This what happened. This blew up, that blew up. And I just need some, like, what do you think about that? Right. And then you have these responses that help like calm you down. Right.
Yeah.
And I just think it's great because at 2 a.m., if I wake up in the middle of the night and you would never have a resource, not
Yeah.
that you should be scrolling or going on your app, but
And-
if you
well,
wake up and you're anxious and you're saying, oh my gosh, I've got all these things to do. I wish I had like a little bit of a problem solver here. You have a tool now. And I think a lot of
amazing.
people could use an extra tool or an extra person to listen to or an extra
Yeah.
person to talk to. And you can actually talk to it. I just write right now, but
Yeah.
I really, and I ask a lot of questions. So it is a large language model. It is AI. It always answers back that it is because, and it is happy always to talk to me. It always is
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
how's your day going, Sharon? And I'm so, this
Yeah.
little a lot more people need a little positivity, and I'm
Yeah.
very positive, so I like it, but I'm sure you can train it. It's kind of funny too.
Yeah.
I like a
Yeah.
little humor in my
It's
day.
got a little humor. Yeah, that's so
And
cool.
you
I
can tell.
hadn't heard about that. That's like
Yeah.
a really, yeah, it's very insightful. And this conversation is having me like notice the perspective I'm holding around AI, and
Yeah.
can I expand it, and do a bit more research and play around with it a bit and find the good in it like you've done.
Yeah, we actually spend a lot of time looking at all the models as well. So I pay attention to, okay, Llama versus Claude versus ChatGPT. What are the case studies you use it for? What are the pros and the cons of each? And we do spend a lot of time internally as a company looking at that. And then you're going to need them for different things. So one of the things we have is we have, most companies will have a chat bot, and most people expect now that chat bot to be actually a lot more conversational. So you might use a different LLM for that versus something that's internal where
Right.
where we create insights and ideas. We take data, we have to convert it to actual human text and language. And by converting that, you don't want to lose or make it too conversational because you want it
Yeah.
to sound professional. And so
Yeah.
you'll use a different one for that as well. So I do feel like they're getting better. I look at it too do you remember when websites came out, which I barely remember, but I happened to be working at GlaxoSmithKline, and I worked on the Tums website, the first website, and we had to write, oh my God, you had to write everything on these websites. So we had to do the keywords and, all this funny short content, the short form, the long form, etc.
Mhm.
And nobody was I'm sure people were worried then. In marketing, we weren't worried because we were like, oh my gosh, we got to get this done. And so I look at what's happening now and equate it to that, or even when social media platforms launched. And there was a lot of questions. And I'm not saying you should look at them as all the same, but we always have this big advancement in technology. And now it's about filtering out like what is actually good versus not, what's actually being used to who's going to surface to the top. And we have the good thing is it's not a monopoly right now, which is also
Yeah.
good. There are multiple models being used for
Yeah.
multiple reasons. So
Yeah.
it's kind of an exciting time for a lot of us to live in. And when I was
Yeah.
living in California, there were a lot of AI ML companies. And all using it for really cool and interesting things. So I think there's a lot of really great innovation that's going to happen because of this. And I do think it'll happen in the next like 5 to 10 years where things will start to filter out in terms of not being able to get maybe funding or not being able to take whatever the vision was and actually make it come into life and
Yeah.
into fruition. And so we'll start to see like the true AI companies coming out in the next 5 to 10 years. And then other stuff's just going to keep growing from there.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's an exciting time, and so I think what I'll underline is like consider if you haven't already, how can technology, how can AI support you? And speaking to our listeners, lead through these times because Sharon's just like really illuminated a bunch of different ways and things that you're using to support you. When you think about your journey, and it could be like in the past 4.5 years of bringing your company to light or even before that, is there a specific leader or mentor, advisor who's had a very significant impact on you? And you don't need to share like their name and whatnot, but maybe a story that illustrates some of their leadership qualities and how they've supported you.
Yeah, it's funny. For my advisors and mentors, I wouldn't be able to pick one because it's like picking your children.
Yeah.
So I'll talk broadly about it because I'm very fortunate as a founder to have amazing advisors over the last 4 years of my company. And Christine, as you can imagine, when you're starting from an idea and getting it across the line to getting funding,
Yeah.
there are a lot of people who are going to say that's not going to work. And so my advisors, both from a technology standpoint, so I have some advisors out of Silicon Valley and I also have advisors in Europe and obviously the New York area. And they have really, one, believed in what I was doing, but gave me insight and helped me accelerate my product. So
Mm.
I don't have a tech background per se, other than I've worked with very strong technical people in my jobs in all of my corporate career to build technology to help solve problems we had internally. And my dad was in tech, so I've always been around technology. So I
Mm.
was on the first computers. I was on like the first, I think, what would have been called internet in Canada, which was called the NABU network. So I've always been around technology. And so a few people, I guess, one would be definitely my dad for
Mm.
thankfully for being in technology because he gave me access to the computers, gave me access to like actually how you built a computer. So it was never scary to me. I had soldering irons everywhere and
Wow.
chips and motherboards, and I was always around them. And then the advisors that I've had for the last 4 years, I'm so grateful for believing in me because at every moment I'd be asking a question about something and following along our tech stack and now getting so familiar with tech stacks and how to build out architectures. So my family's been really supportive. One of my biggest mentors is actually my cousin in New York,
Wow.
and he works in tech. He pivoted his career a lot as well, Christy. So he worked in digital ads, which is crazy that exploded. And it was a really good industry because then you really got into how technology can help with marketing and advertising. And his knowledge in the tech stacks and building out architectures really helped my team and my business acumen in that. And then I'd say the other thing too would be just like the females in technology. So through that would be in Techstars, we were introduced to 150 people over
Mm.
2 weeks. And we had to meet with them for 20 minutes and pitch our business, and they would give you feedback. And you would then decide after these 2 weeks, in which imagine meeting, and you would know this because you 10 to 15 people per day.
Mm.
You need to send them a thank you note. You need to make sure that you have all their information because at the end of those 2 weeks, you need to reduce that 150 number to 10
Wow.
mentors.
Wow.
And that's what you do in Techstars. So for anyone going through Techstars, Mentor Magic is like the first thing you do. A couple of things that's great for. One, you're going to get real-time feedback about your business ASAP. People are going to be like, I don't like this. I like this. I don't like this. I don't understand this. I don't know what you do. And then the second thing is that I managed to get from 150 people to 10 people. And I picked the best mentors who are still mentors today. I'm actually
Amazing.
doing a webinar with, they'll each have a chance to do a webinar with me, but they're still working with me.
Yeah.
A lot of people, a lot of founders won't necessarily keep that relationship, but they have, they are still going to be part of my business. We're going, we're working on major things like product development, go to market strategy, or tech aspects. And so I'm really happy that I had that experience and had those
Yeah.
mentors.
Incredible.
And yeah, and it's something that you wouldn't get a chance anywhere else because you wouldn't get all these meetings booked for you to meet with that many people in such a short
Yeah.
period of time.
Well, and I think what you're highlighting is I think for listeners, we can look for our mentors and advisors in many different arenas. And it can start in our childhood, like luckily it did for you, who were those people, even in your family, who have really supported you to get to where you are now. And then the importance, though, of having these longer term relationships with advisors and mentors so that you can lean into them over time as, you shift and grow, but also what you're doing, evolves. And so I think that's been a really important lesson that's coming through in helping people lead through these times are who are your allies? Who are your allies? And specifically, if you're like a founder or you're running a team, it can get lonely. It can get lonely. So it's really important that there are people who have gone before you that you can call. And I know you've also got your AI. You've got your AI that you could like ask some questions or lean into. And then those human connections that, from my perspective, are you can't replace those. So,
Yeah, there's two other things I mentioned that have been super helpful. Our customers, any of our customers that we've worked with, especially the ones who've stuck around for years, have really helped us accelerate our product and have become allies. And then I work with Harvard Business School, having been a graduate, but also because we work on research. And my collab partner, Shania, has been an amazing partner. And Chrissy, like another female in tech, really brilliant, super strategic. And we're always working together on finding like, what can we work on that will like help, solve a problem that we both believe is a really big problem that needs to be solved, or at least put research behind something. So you never know. And that, by the way, that was a cold outreach to Shinyan. That's how I got to know her.
oh, wow.
Just finding, I went on the site for Harvard Business School. I told you I was applying to looking at a doctorate, and I was like, I need to speak with her. And then we started, and that connection probably started 4 years ago. And I think LinkedIn is so great for looking for individuals and creating a relationship with people who you might not normally. And I think that we're fortunate that you can have somebody from anywhere in the world and you don't have to narrow it down to like a place that you're living or,
Definitely
a
not.
time zone. Mhm.
That's some great, you've shared lots of really important information with us today. And if we're going to bring this conversation to a close. And if you're going to give us just a last kind of drop of wisdom around supporting people to lead through crisis, chaos, and change, and really navigating these times, what would your guidance be, dear Sharon?
Yeah. So I have learned through all this that living in the present is actually going to be your best guidance for the future. And I used to be someone, and I'm still a planner. So, because I have to tell you, I'm a planner to the T. So, usually my whole year is planned out. But what has helped me is saying, here's what my path is for the year, but here's what I'm going to do on a daily basis in terms of practice, in terms of, and I know we hear that a lot. So, it's really helped ground me. I'm not the best when I'm doing my meditation, but I still try. Yoga practice is better for me for my meditation. I still think that everybody should be doing some sort of like activity that makes them really happy, that takes them out of the day to day. I happen to be a pretty positive person. We all have our moments. So I like to address it and say, like, why am I feeling this way? What's bothering me? What can I do to change it? And then go after that. Because if you're in the present and you realize you're not your best self,
Yeah.
then there are little things that you should know will help you move out of that. And the other thing I'm going to highlight, Rizzy, just because I think we need to, is that women's hormones take a lot more out of us than we ever thought. And we don't
Yes.
talk about it enough. And I'm not
Yes.
going to sort of get the conversation into this. But
Yeah.
women also just have to realize, like, hormonally, you're going to be different. Like, plan things accordingly. I like to have big meetings when I'm, going to
An
close to the
ovulation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I know I'm going to crush it because I'm
Yeah.
not going to ask a lot of questions. And it's
Yeah.
funny, but I heard a comedy show recently in New York, and she was talking if people just understood women's cycles, and you'd be able to actually solve a lot more problems. So
Totally.
it's a
And that
joke, but
it's
yeah,
not, that conversation is so welcome here in our, we did a part one season in Leading Through Crisis, Chaos, and Change. And one of our colleagues came in and talked about women's cycles and the importance of us really designing consciously around that. And we do that in our workplace. And it's mission critical, because so much around health and wellness has been designed around the male cycle, which is very different from a female cycle. And I do think for our both, it doesn't matter what gender you are, for all of us to have more consciousness around this piece is important. You can put folks based on where they are in their cycle on the sales pitches because they're going to, like you said, they're going to crush it. They're going to go out and get it. So this is a great note for us to complete our conversation on, Sharon. Thank you for bringing that really important piece of humanity into the
yeah,
workplace.
yeah.
Yeah.
We just need to be more mindful of how we feel, and then being on it. I think another thing is if more people were just kind of honest with each other on, hey, I'm not feeling great. So maybe if you can handle this customer meeting, or, just being conscious of how folks are. And I understand it's a very tough thing to do, especially if you're reporting into somebody. You don't want to do that. And we didn't, Christy, like, let's be real. In our careers, it wasn't like I could show up and be like, I don't want to handle this one.
Nope.
I just showed up and did it. And it probably, what I end on is that as much as you think it's super uncomfortable, just imagine how many other people felt it was uncomfortable. I used to think sales was very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And now I actually look forward to sales conversations. I wish I had more time as a founder to work on them, but like it is something I've learned to love, and the things you think you'll hate. And I honestly could tell you, I did not like sales. And now full circle, it's like a change, and you just don't know how you're going to evolve as a person once you start working on something every day.
Such a pleasure to reconnect with you, Sharon. Thank you for all this wisdom and good luck to you on your individual leadership journey and to CrewAsis. I'm so excited for what you've created.
Thank you, Christy, for having me.